Hey there and welcome. So today we're going to tackle a puzzle that's probably been hiding in plain sight on your calendar your whole life. We're diving into the story of Armenian Christmas. And trust me, it might just change everything you thought you knew about where the holiday actually comes from. All right, so to really get the Armenian tradition, we first have to zoom in on the biggest mystery of all, the date of Christmas itself. I mean, have you ever stopped to think about it? Why do so many Christians, all celebrating the exact same thing, do it on 3 different days? It seems like a simple question, right? But the answer? Well, it goes way deeper than you'd expect. Yeah, I mean, look at this. The dates are all over the map. You've got most of the Western world on December 25th, then a lot of Orthodox churches are on January 7th, and smack in the middle, you have the Armenian church on January 6th. It looks like total chaos. But here's the thing. That confusion? That's actually our very first clue. So to figure this puzzle out, we have to travel way, way back. Back to the very beginning of Christianity. And believe me, what we find there, it's going to completely flip the script on the Christmas story most of us grew up with. Okay, so here it is, the first big shocker. December 25th, the date that billions of people celebrate, it's not the original. No way. For the first few hundred years of Christianity, that date had absolutely nothing to do with Jesus' birth. Instead of December 25th, early Christians had this one single massive celebration on January 6th. It was called Theophany, and that name is key. It literally means the revelation of God. This was the original all-in-one winter festival for the whole church. And Theophany was so much more than just a birthday party. It rolled all the key moments of Jesus' reveal to the world into one. You had his birth, yeah, but also the visit from the Magi, his baptism in the Jordan, and even his very first miracle. It was the whole story all at once. Okay, so if everybody was on the same page with January 6th, then where in the world did December 25th even come from? Well, it didn't happen overnight. It was a slow burn. The very first time we see any record of a December 25th celebration is in Rome around the year 336. And from there, this idea of splitting the birth from the baptism, it starts to spread, moving from the west over to the east. By the time we hit the 5th century, pretty much the entire Christian world had switched over to this new two-party system. So the big question is, why that date? Why December 25th? Well, scholars basically have 2 main theories. On one hand, you have the theological calculation. The idea here is that Christ was conceived on March 25th, which tradition held was also the day he was crucified. You just add 9 months to that, and boom, you land on December 25th. The other theory, the one you've probably heard of, is that the church cleverly chose the date to basically hijack a super popular Roman pagan festival for Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, which happened right on the winter solstice. And this is where we get to the absolute heart of our story today. Because as the rest of the Christian world is making this switch, one of the oldest Christian nations on the planet just doesn't. So why? Why did Armenia stick with the original tradition? The entire answer comes down to one single critical year, 451 AD. Seriously, everything that happened that year explains it all. You really have to picture this. In 451, while a bunch of theologians in the Byzantine Empire are all gathered at the Council of Chalcedon, debating the really fine points of theology, the entire nation of Armenia is on the battlefield. They're literally fighting for their survival against the Persian Empire, which was trying to stamp out their Christian faith. So, yeah, Armenia couldn't exactly send a delegation to that council. They were a little busy fighting for their lives. And later, when they heard the conclusions, they rejected them, which created this major split with the Byzantine Church. So now, they're basically isolated. And when that happens, your ancient traditions suddenly become a huge part of your identity, of your survival. They were not about to start adopting new holidays from the very people they just had a major falling out with. But wait, the story's not quite done. There's one last kind of mind-bending twist to this whole puzzle. And it all has to do with the calendar. So here's the deal. The old calendar, the Julian calendar, wasn't perfect. It was off by just a tiny bit each year, but over centuries that adds up. It drifts. So in 1582, the Gregorian calendar comes along to fix the problem. But as you can imagine, not everybody jumped on board right away. And this is what explains the very last piece of our puzzle. It's why, even today, you see 2 different dates. Most Armenians around the world in the diaspora celebrate on January 6th. That's using our modern Gregorian calendar. But the churches back in Armenia and in Jerusalem, they still follow the old Julian calendar. So for them, that original date of January 6th now lands on what we call January 19th. It's the same ancient holiday, just viewed through two different calendar systems.
Okay, so after all that history, the dates, the councils, the calendars, what's the big takeaway? What does this incredible story of survival actually mean? You know, at its core, this isn't just a history lesson. It's deeper. It's theological. By holding on to that single feast of Theophany, the Armenian tradition makes a powerful statement. It says the Nativity and the baptism aren't two separate holidays. They're two sides of the exact same coin. They're the complete, unified story of God revealing himself to humanity. So if you take away just one thing from all this, let it be this. The Armenian celebration on January 6th isn't some weird historical outlier. It is a living, breathing, unbroken link straight back to the earliest days of Christianity, to the way the very first Christians celebrated this event. And that just leaves us with one final big question to think about. In a world that's changing faster than ever, what can an ancient tradition like this one, a tradition that's survived against all odds, teach us about who we are, about the connection between our identity, our history, and our faith?